Welcome everyone to Box Works Digital. I am Lakshmi Hanspal, Global CISO for Box, and today we're going to be talking about securing and sustaining remote work. Securing remote work isn't just a technology issue. In this digital era, security is built on layers of trust that underpin the way people engage with technologies. To get security right in an operating environment, leaders need an approach that elevates trust throughout the entire ecosystem. Today with me, I have esteemed panelists from 3 different companies, and we're going to be talking to you about how we see as practitioners about securing and sustaining remote work. First, I want to introduce to you Meg Anderson, VP and CISO for Principal Financial Group. Meg?
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here today. Like Lakshmi said, my name is Meg Anderson. I'm the CISO at Principal Financial Group. We're located in Des Moines, Iowa. We're a Fortune 500 company with customers in over 80 countries with 700 billion assets under management. And our customers include consumers, individuals, and small to medium-sized businesses, as well as institutions. We offer retirement products, insurance products, long-term savings, and asset management products. And our enterprise information security strategy is something that we refresh on an annual basis. The COVID pandemic really created a shift in our priorities. However, it was good timing for us because we were looking at our strategy at that point in time, actually the Tuesday prior to going to remote work. So there was a lot of things that we need to consider as we adapted to the shift in operational priorities. It happened very quickly, and then it helped inform our 3 to 5 year strategy.
Thank you, Meg. Very interesting. We're going to dive deep into some of the priority areas that you just mentioned. Next with us, we have Chris Niggel, Regional CSO Americas for Okta. Chris?
Hey, good day. Thank you very much. My name's Chris Niggel. I've been with Okta for a little more than 5 years. In fact, I originally started as a customer. At Okta, we securely connect people to technology. There's 3 main ways that our customers use the Okta product. The first one is for workforce identity, where Okta is used to provide single sign-on capability to all of the cloud applications and now some of the on-prem applications that your employees use. This creates a significant benefit in not only simplifying the access for your employees, as they only need to remember one username and password, but also providing strong multi-factor authentication across all of these environments, platforms, and applications. The second way is customer identity and access management. As more organizations begin to understand the importance of creating a good, strong user experience for their applications, certainly COVID has changed a lot of the ways that we interact with our applications and the environment that we live in. Identity is at the source of that. We need to sign into every application that we use. Okta allows customers to just drop in the power of our global application to manage that authentication for those applications. That allows your developers to focus on what they really do best, which is develop quality experiences for your users. And the final way is we believe that identity is the core of the new zero trust models. And we'll be talking a lot about that, I think, today, as we really start to focus on what we need to do to secure remote work. The idea of zero trust is that we can no longer trust our networks. And being that our employees are now all working from home and hopefully soon back from coffee shops and other public locations, this idea of zero trust has really been accelerated. So I'm very excited for what the opportunities are going to bring over the next couple of years and over the next hour with the team here.
Thanks, Chris. And we have Tony Solz from Amgen, Deputy CISO of Amgen. Tony?
Yes, thank you, Lakshmi, and a great opportunity to be here on the panel today. As mentioned, my name is Tony Solz. I'm the Deputy CISO at Amgen, and my core responsibility is to focus on our global information protection strategy And I also oversee our 24/7 global security operations. At Amgen, our mission is to serve patients. And, even through these changes, our focus, our strategic imperatives are focused on developing innovative medicines, conducting transformational research, and operating world-class biomanufacturing. And that still remains our focus. But given the COVID-19 situation, the what has also changed for us. We're also in the hunt to find a vaccine for COVID-19, and that has significantly changed our strategic priorities from where they were pre-COVID-19. At the beginning of the COVID-19 situation, like many companies, we had to evolve quickly, and we were able to stand up several agile product teams to support our IOS transformation. And hopefully we can talk about some of those efforts and how security played an integral role in that scrum of scrums approach that we took.
Thanks, Tony. A lot of information there to unpack from all of you. Thank you for giving us a bit of it in the beginning. So, as fellow practitioners, we are in month 6, we can say around week 24 of the world's largest work from home experiment, though I don't know if it stays an experiment anymore. Maybe this is status quo for many of us for a while. So when we think about boundaries shifting on us, boundaries of network, boundaries of devices, boundaries of business priorities, how has remote work required you in your role to rethink your boundaries of trust? Meg, why don't we start with you?
Sure. I think something that Chris mentioned is something that we're really talking about, and that is zero trust. So we really want to make sure that the systems and applications that are being used remain accessible, and we're using our modern technology platforms. And so there's a continuation of need to have frictionless security, but yet not to forget the security, especially as the attack surface has widened with so many people working from home, as Chris mentioned, hopefully a coffee shop someday. But to be able to have that accessible and easy, speed and convenience still matter in the zero trust model. And so I think the art of creating a zero trust architecture for the organization is really going to help us get that strong boundary of trust while ensuring that our employees feel like they can access what they want, as well as all of the partners. As we move through digital transformation, understanding our supply chain, partnerships, ecosystems that we participate in, it all comes together using a zero trust architecture. Maybe the other thing that I'll mention is the importance of having effective controls around our data, because as our employees widen, we really need to make sure we remain keeping our customer data as well as their financial retirement accounts, etc., very protected. And that also includes our intellectual property. So we really need to be thinking about how are we working, where are we working, and how do we put that story together so that we remain protecting everything wherever it might be.
Love it. So the art of securing boundaries with zero trust and protecting intellectual property, portfolio, nest eggs, right? So those are like I'm just summarizing the two sort of key ways in which the rethinking on the boundaries of trust.
Yep.
Right? Chris, how about you? How is Okta and also you as a practitioner within the industry, how are you thinking about how these boundaries of trust have changed and what needs to adapt along with that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the pandemic, we'll say, struck at a very interesting time for me personally, because we were just getting ready for our annual audit cycle. My team's responsible for our both our private and public sector audit programs, including SOC 2 Type 2, ISO 27001, and our FedRAMP authorization. So we were just getting ready to step into our annual SOC 2 Type 2 ISO 27001 audits, which is about it's about a 2-month long process, with 1 month of that being on-site reviews from our third-party auditor. Of course, with the pandemic and the office shutdown, we were unable to do that, and we're scrambling with our auditors to try and find a solution that would allow us to continue that the continuity and the demonstration of the effectiveness of our security controls without the on-prem portion. And I think we were actually the first organization that our auditor had to do with doing running that audit in a fully remote way. So that drew special attention to some of the trust boundaries that we put in place and relied upon physical security controls. Now at Okta, we're very lucky in that we don't store or process cardholder information, so PCI information, where the physical security controls play a very large role in the audit. But we do have many customers, who do. And so trying to find the ways that we can help educate our employees to take the controls that we need to demonstrate or that we put in place in the offices, like say anti-tailgating measures, and educate our employees on what they need to do to help protect the trust boundaries of now their home offices, ensuring that we're putting extra effort on things like clean desk policies. We actually worked with our workforce team to create a budget for employees to purchase computer equipment that was necessary to maintain privacy. So things like privacy shields for their monitors and for their laptops. Again, to ensure that our employees were able to maintain the trust that our customers expect of us, even while working from home.
Great. So adaptation on audits, I can totally relate with that. And I'm sure at some point in time, we're going to talk about the art and creativity that went into auditing on-site audits for third parties. I'm sure we'll get into that. So adaptation on audits, and then on-par controls when with the nebulous nature or the loss of the physical security boundaries, how do we still maintain the controls on par with home offices, with all of those identified? And that's pretty interesting. Tony, how do you see this from the boundaries of trust? Clearly, Amgen, by the way, we're all rooting for you and your company. It's like, please, with the vaccine efforts, we're truly grateful for all the efforts put in there. But how are you seeing the boundaries of trust more so evolve for you, and more so given that in the current environment, there's more at stake, including more of the newer intellectual property that's being built?
Yeah, so it's a very good question. And I think, the first comment I'll just make is that, this concept of remote work is not a novel concept by any means. Amgen has had several hundreds, thousands of employees perhaps working remotely prior to COVID-19. But as Meg described, clearly the risk surface is now expanding significantly, where we have more staff. And so I think what that does is it just changes the calculations of the risk, right? When you look at probability and impact, or you look at the risk surface, we're now potentially exposing more and more in the ways that we're working. And then to add to that, we're now integrating more personal technologies and networks at the home or wherever individuals are working. And that obviously raises kind of new scenarios that we're experiencing even today on a daily basis, and that we're trying to address and control. From our standpoint, one of the things that we stood up very quickly in the beginning of COVID-19 was an assessment of our supply chain continuity, which is obviously very important in our manufacturing and distribution environment. And I think when we think about the boundaries and the expanded boundaries, while our transformation was fairly seamless, I would like to describe, compared to other organizations, I think we had a really predominant focus on our supply chain. How is it impacting other companies that we rely on? Do we have proper business continuity plans? Are we executing those appropriately? And more importantly, are those communications and engagements now protected? So that boundary of trust expanding because of this. And I think the two areas, that are really important are number one, that supply chain continuity. But the other element is around the data protection element. So now, folks working at home, staff working at home, want to be able to print documents. They want to be able to save things certain places that they may not have needed to do when they were on site. And so how do our controls evolve into the home environment and really make sure that we have this notion of a zero trust environment or a device trust or data trust environment. So data protection has been on the forefront since we've continued to evolve, and that's something we continue to monitor very closely.
Very nice. So connecting the dots, Meg, you mentioned data protection as well. And Tony, you mentioned the other aspect, which is stability of supply chain, business continuity, disaster recovery. How are they doing? And I think that's great because that's extending the partnership sort of relationship, or the partner hand first saying, hey, how are you doing? How is your continuity looking at, right? So I think that's great. So when we think about, we just spoke about remote work and how that has made us rethink the boundaries that we need to look at, and especially the boundaries of trust. So what were some of the ways, when did you realize that things were going to shift significantly, and how have you secured, that sustained remote work? Chris, let's start with you.
Our company was already very supportive of remote work. I personally had recently moved from coming in the office 3 days a week to a fully remote role. And in fact, most of our employees operate in that same capacity where they were working remotely, working from home 1 to 2 days a week. Quite honestly, and being based in San Francisco, it's the only way that we can deal with the commute. So we were in a very good position to be able to shift very quickly to a fully remote workforce. And in fact, recently our CEO, Todd McKinnon, has announced that all Okta employees within what is capable will now be working remotely. So we really do see this as a permanent shift for our company, and it opens up a lot of opportunities. It opens up a lot of opportunities in terms of hiring, new talent, talent retention, as well as helping us as an organization become a more diverse organization, because we have access to larger pools of talent. So from that perspective, I think this is a shift that's really going to stay, in particular for Okta, and provide a lot of value for us. For things that we're focused on, I would say the biggest piece is the IT requirements. The moving to a fully remote workforce did have a lot of impact on our IT team, and making some changes to provisioning, deprovisioning, because we still had that traditional approach where new hires, they need to come into the office, you need to meet everyone, and that's where you're given your laptop and your badge. So how do we provide those hardware, the training, the information, and the identity verification when employees could not come into the office? So that required some changing. It took a month or two to figure that out. But with the technologies that we have now, with automatic provisioning, drop shipping of laptops, it's an issue that we were really largely able to solve quite quickly.
Great. And that ties into many of the things that you said in terms of the priorities where Okta continues to focus on, right, when in the beginning. Tony, how about for you? You mentioned that Amgen had a remote workforce already in the roles that allowed to operate in that way. When you think about now having operated 5-6 months with an extended remote workforce, how has that secure your approach to securing the shift to remote work? Anything that you would say was surprising, and any assumptions you needed to go revisit?
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, again, I think Amgen was in a very good position pre-COVID to support the remote workforce. Talking to peers across the industries and hearing how some of the other organizations had to fare with the change, anywhere from 60 to almost 100% of these organizations may not have had the technical capabilities to work remotely. They were then put into an environment where they had to use personal devices or some other augmentation of technology, which probably weakened their overall security posture. And again, I think in our situation, we were fortunately well prepared for the transition. However, the primary focus for us has really been around the people. Not necessarily technology. It's been around the education and the awareness aspects, and we've really tried to uptick our education, our posts around how staff need to be interacting in their home environment. We've been a lot more straightforward and open about the items that they need to consider when they're working at home. This can vary from simple things like you're working in your physical environment, who's around you, who can hear you, do you have headphones on, do you leave your laptop running and then your family or your roommates or guests have access to all your equipment. Then into the more specific technology components. Are you running off public Wi-Fi? Do you have your house Wi-Fi set up where maybe you can split multiple networks and just put your corporate devices on one network? And so we've been trying to share these types of tips and providing a lot of guidance, and I think that's really been effective. But to answer the question around, when did we see or feel that we were really changing? I think a lot of it came with our overall email usage, which probably isn't a surprise. But within the first month, immediately, we saw roughly a 30 to 40% uptick in email. And proportionally, the spam and the phishing attempts were rising with that 30 to 40% increase as well. So again, probably not really a surprise, but we started to see a lot of volume coming in, that activity increasing. And then due to the awareness and the educational campaigns, that actually put a lot more stress on the number of events that were being reported, which is a good thing. But it's also a lot more work for us in the background to kind of work through the items and make sure that they're being addressed appropriately.
Great. So you mentioned home IT support and the volume and velocity of not so unexpected usage, right? You said email, probably messaging channels as well. And so not just an outgoing or incoming corporate use, but also in the spam and phishing and social engineering use of those channels as well. Yeah, so no, very appropriate. We're going to dig into some of those. Meg, how about you? From when, we talked about the realizing the shift is going to be significant and how your team has helped to secure that shift for remote work. What are some of the, focus areas for your team until you reached steady state?
Yeah, I think one of the advantages that we have is we do have offices in Asia. And so we definitely saw the impact there first. We also had endured protests in Hong Kong over the months prior to the pandemic. So there was a rich business continuity plan in place and preparedness to work from home in areas outside the US that haven't worked from home as much as we have in the US. So that was really beneficial. Of course, nobody could see that coming. But looking back, it was, if you will, lucky that we had the opportunity to make sure everybody had the right equipment, things like multi-factor were set up, people understood the technology related to remote access and those kinds of things. So that was really good. So we were able to see that when it hit the US in a larger way. We were able to mobilize our response teams, work through the scale of the remote work. That was really the thing that we had. We have snowstorms here in Des Moines, Iowa, and so we were able to see thousands use our VPN in the past during those events, but we have about 18,000 employees worldwide and have never seen everyone work remotely at once. But we did have call center employees who work from home on a regular basis and various roles. So it wasn't really a question of whether or not it could happen. It was really how quickly are we going to be able to make this happen. And that was probably one of the most surprising things to many people, is how quickly it happened. Really, it was over a weekend and everybody was up and running. And probably what was surprising to me was how resilient our workforce was and how easy it was for them to adapt. We were, Tony mentioned email volumes, but we were in the middle of transitioning from one video conferencing provider to another. And that had typically been a pretty incremental approach. We were always very cognizant of change management and not putting too much pressure, to learn new technology overnight and that sort of thing. It was a very deliberate rollout plan. And what we saw was the functionality of the new system really caused people to want to adopt it quicker, and it was able to make the work from home experience a lot richer. And so that's a good learning for us moving forward, is maybe those baby steps weren't as important as we thought in technology adoption.
So accelerated mass adoption of those newer technologies, that's great. And I'm going to open this up to all of you. A couple of things. Meg, you mentioned BC-DR planning, business continuity DR, and Chris and Tony, you've mentioned part of that as well. Chris, you mentioned, Tony, you mentioned in terms of supplier, and then Chris, you also have mentioned in terms of the corporate continuity. I want to ask, was that, has that had a greater focus now, sort of a magnifying lens now? And then the second is, when you think about any business decisions that you wanted to revisit that perhaps were made in March or closer to the time when overnight, over weekend, you had to enable the task force, has that happened as well? So business decisions, and then on the BCDR plan.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and go first. I have been the CISO at Principal for 12 years, and one of the things that I have learned is if you make risk management choices, you need to make sure that you're documenting those choices, because somebody will ask you about them later, whether that's an external auditor, internal auditor, a savvy customer, a partner, CEO, whomever, the board. And so right away, we said, okay, if we are going to do something outside of the norm, outside of the policy, let's make sure we document it. And so we started that. We didn't get any pushback on doing that. We made sure we got the proper approvals very swiftly in this situation. And we also made a commitment to determine which of those would be rolled back, which of those would become permanent, and which of them needed analyzed to determine that. And so a very small change that we made was allowing passwords to expire later than they normally would. And part of the reason for that is because our employees have had some difficulty related to password expiration when on the VPN. There's a little bit of a process that you have to know about to do it right. There's a little bit of luck involved, I think, as well. And we didn't want to overrun our service desks. So we made that shift to alleviate that sort of distraction. We also made some shifts in timing of some training, computer-based training requirements and things like that, because we really knew that employees needed to focus on helping our customers, and we didn't want some of these other things to interrupt their day and focus on making sure we could provide the right level of customer service.
I can relate to the password change. One of the things we did in Box is we increased the length of password and also increased the duration of change, right? So if you increase complexity, then we can increase the duration of change. Who else? Like, what happened with terms of business decisions that you want to visit or revisit?
Yeah, so actually, it's interesting to hear you say that, Lakshmi, because we did exactly the same thing. We rolled to a passphrase model as well to allow people to have longer running passwords and also easier to remember passwords. Because that impact when an employee is not able to do their work because of an IT issue, whether that be passwords or a hardware issue, is magnified now. The business continuity, I think, is also a very interesting point, because for all of the challenges that a pandemic has when it comes to testing a business continuity plan, it's actually a fairly effective way, because we do have the ability to, as Meg mentioned, kind of see how this pandemic affected other areas of the world, and it gave us a chance to kind of prepare, for that. On the other side, in particular for those of us who are in California, it highlighted some weaknesses that we hadn't necessarily foreseen when it comes to our business continuity plans. And a great example here is, unfortunately, the recent wildfires that went through the Bay Area. Whereas our business continuity plans previously had really focused on, well, if an employee, if our office building is unavailable, there's a fiber cut or something similar, our employees can utilize their internet at home to perform the same tasks. Well, now we had to recognize that our employees are primarily using the internet at home. And so when there are other types of threats like wildfire or power safety shutoffs, then that is going to have a very different and a much larger impact on the business productivity and the business availability that we now have to adjust for.
Yeah, no, I can relate to that, Chris. Just an example, our change window, which is anyway already scheduled and very predictable, during those wildfires and the scheduled power shutdowns, we had decreased it even further, and we had said, said these changes will not occur during that window, right? So just to sort of further protect the resiliency and stability of the platform. Tony, how about you in terms of BCDR and then business decisions that may need some revisiting?
Yeah, sure. So first, I'd just like to reiterate a point Meg made about the collaboration tool. We were actually queuing up a collaboration tool change for our enterprise right before COVID, and COVID-19 actually accelerated our effort there too. And I think we kind of had the same output, which we saw the staff a lot more engaged and interested, and I think that helped actually make the project more successful. But completely understand the timing and the complexity around that. But I do think the acceleration helped. On the DR side of the house and the BCP side of the house, one of our strategic imperatives before COVID-19 was actually around resilience. And so we were already focusing a lot on kind of detection, response, and recovery efforts even prior to COVID. And I think because of the progress that we made in some of those efforts, we were able to achieve benefits, right during the remote work transition, to be able to put some of those to test. So while we may not have had an opportunity to test them in a test environment, we definitely tested them in production, and we got a lot of good lessons learned out of that transformation. One component of that was the establishment of a business resiliency network that we have now put in place at Amgen. And that just gives us complete coverage of the different business functions at Amgen. It assigns accountable members from each of the functions to contribute and be able to address when there is an incident or a crisis, how do we respond to that? And again, I think the stand-up of that structure, the processes we put in place prior to COVID-19 really helped us with that. One specific example of something that our IS acceleration team focused on doing was creating a signals dashboard of some of our key critical systems. So this provided transparency into the health of the systems that are commonly accessed at Amgen and are really important to our business. And so if you can just imagine kind of a dashboard that shows the system, it shows the overall health. And we drew a lot of attention to that because at first, probably similar to some of your organizations, the volume was increasing and the demand on those systems was stretching them. And so this was just a way that we could, in real time communicate back with our staffs that there is an issue, a health issue, we're addressing it, and we're trying to get everything back to green quickly.
So transparency and line of sight on the health of critical services, and also mapping those. You mentioned IT mapped it to an asset inventory or a stack inventory that they already had. A lot of great information has been shared, and we have more to come, but we're going to change the pace of our discussion just slightly by going into what I would call the lightning round. So lightning round, it's 3 questions, 1-word or 2-word answers. We'll have an opportunity to sort of unpack those 1 or 2 words after each of you have had a chance to answer it. So here goes the first question. In 1 word, describe the state of cloud security compliance privacy today. Meg, we'll start with you.
Complex.
Chris?
Strong.
Okay. Tony?
Volatile.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Oh, volatile. Sorry.
Volatile. Okay, so we have all the way complex, strong, volatile. So Chris, you're the optimist here on this. But I can see, complex, 18,000 across 80 different locations. The scale can be complex. I think the providers or your partners in this space clearly, everybody should understand the pace at which they need to meet the customers. And then volatile, Tony, is this connected with what you mentioned with the supply chain exercise that you did? And was that like, hey, we are going to continue to pay more attention to our supply chain? Can you help us understand where the volatile is coming from?
Well, I think if you just look in the cloud aspect, the amount of services that are being issued, just say from an Amazon perspective, they're frequently happening. Our ability to understand those and learn how to protect them is always changing. And if you look at the majority of cloud breaches, overwhelmingly the majority are self-inflicted, which means that it's an inverse problem. It's not necessarily an external threat actor that may be causing issues directly. They're just maybe taking advantage of a door that's wide open due to misconfiguration or whatever the case may be. And then when I think of the compliance and privacy area, the first thing that comes to mind is just the regional evolving regulatory landscape. So if you look at things like the China cybersecurity law, or you look in the EU now, the regulations around data localization and data privacy are constantly changing really quickly on top of everything else happening.
Right. So, anytime there's a human element involved, the volatility, and then of course the misconfiguration, all of that can lead to volatility in the environment. Okay. I was a close second, maybe Chris, to you. I would have said 1 word, promising. So it means like we're not quite there yet, but hey, looks like we're in the path. We're in the journey to get there. The second question, what is 1 security or compliance issue that every business should be concerned about today? Tony, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to stay focused on the non-technical answer. I'm going to stay focused on people. I think people are constantly making cybersecurity a challenge. Recently in the times, we've seen now where you have cyber criminals who are now trying to pay staff members to implement ransomware in their environments. And it doesn't really matter at that point, all the firewalls or the proxies or the technology you have in place. That's a people problem. And I think it's just important for us as we continue to evolve into remote work, understanding how the people threat continues to evolve.
Okay, so continue staying focused on people. Chris?
Yeah, I'm going to go with privacy. on this one.
Interesting.
Tony's comments around the volatility with cloud security, right? I think are spot on there. And as we continue to evolve, especially as we're looking at the concepts of machine learning, big data, organizations that are creating large volumes of data, privacy is going to become a larger and larger part of us as of our roles as security and IT professionals. I know that my role now is probably half legal, half security, and I don't anticipate that changing.
Great. Meg?
So I'll go with a different take on people, and that's identity. So really understanding who
Okay.
in terms
So
of
people or non-people, carbon or non-carbon forms.
Right,
Okay.
exactly. Deep fakes and faking voices for business email compromise and that sort of attack. So that's what I'll go with, making sure you know who's accessing your systems.
Very nice. Okay. And if you weren't doing what you're doing today, what would you be doing, or what would you like to be doing? Chris, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, that would be mountain guiding.
Oh, wow. That'd be great. Tony?
Yeah, so being at home now, Lakshmi, we talked about this previously, but while I'm physically here, I feel like I'm potentially even further now from my family. So I'm kind of getting teased here. I think one thing that would be really nice would just be to stay focused on my family, since I'm in a proximity with them, but locked in the office potentially, for the majority of the day. So I'd love to just focus and be at home focusing on family.
Oh, I can totally relate to that. My kids say, Mom, we saw you more when you were traveling than you are behind the doors of your home office. So absolutely. And Meg?
I'm going to go with a librarian. I thought long and hard about this, but I love to read, and I think it's really fun to alphabetize things. I've always liked to alphabetize. So that is my second career, librarian. Hopefully there'll be some libraries at some point in time in the future, more of them.
And guide others. I know when I go to the library with my kids, they're constantly pestering the librarian, like, is it this book A or like this book B? What should we take? And I'm like, you have 5 books you can take at one time, right? With your card, like you don't have to decide right away. So,
well, I'm glad to hear that your kids are still going to libraries. I wasn't sure with everything being digital if that was still a thing.
When they were open, like I know now it is not, but when they were open. Well, that's great. A lot of insight there. And if you want to know what I would be doing, I would, I'm going to, at least my proposed retirement plan, I'm saying proposed because it's like, I don't know if it's going to come to fruition, is to be without borders. So a CISO without borders, a mom without borders, just travel, volunteer, and, know where the need is and go towards it. So jumping back into our topic again, it's securing and sustaining remote work. We discussed about rethinking boundaries of trust, the shift to remote work, how it was secured, the challenges, some of the art and creativity that went into maintaining steady state. Clearly, some of the trends in your business have changed, have accelerated, have pivoted. How is that showing up in your current strategy? Tony, why don't we start with you?
Sure. So I think it depends on the business line in our company, which is primarily broken down into our research and development space, our operations space, and then our commercial space. And I think if you look across them, they're very unique. And it's almost like running 3 independent business lines sometimes, at least from a security perspective, just because the environments are different, the technology they use vary, and there's obviously a different risk picture associated with them. But I think, for some of the digital transformation acceleration that we're starting to see, predominantly we have a lot of research and development. Our scientists are still coming in and out of our campus sites, even given the current circumstances. But we have seen, more remote capabilities around them accessing their lab instruments remotely and being able to actually conduct more studies remotely. And I think that's something that our team has been very heavily involved in from a security standpoint. In the operations space, we're looking at several remote technologies ranging from augmented reality that would allow an expert on the floor, the plant floor, to be able to interact with local machines, remotely and interactively. And so that's another environment. And then in the commercial space, our sales force needs to go communicate with our healthcare providers, and that whole environment is completely changing now, given the limitations of interacting with physicians and healthcare providers in person. So I think those are just some examples across the spectrum that are really causing us to rethink how we are accelerating our digital transformation strategy.
Very interesting. So as the business is thinking about AR, augmented reality, telehealth, is that what it's called nowadays? Like, or in the e-health space, electronic or telehealth space, and you mentioned a number of others. Really interesting to see that, especially the augmented reality with the interacting with the machines. It seems to be one that the current millennial generation would love to dig a little deeper on that and understand that space. Meg, how about you? How has business priorities or trends in that right now shaping up your strategy?
Like many financial services companies, we were already on the digital transformation journey. And I think as we look at what accelerated it, it's really the ability for our customers to interact with us, not in person. So sales experience all the way through signing documents with e-signature, things like that, really required more from our technology teams in terms of developing software quickly, which means we need to adapt as well as be more proactive on the security side and be able to deliver with speed, as well as making sure the software is secure. So all those things we are already doing just sort of amped up all of that, amplified the need and the requirement for speed, where we were making incremental progress, but we needed to make it faster. So that's probably the primary thing that I've noticed.
So agility and pace, that's the...
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
And Chris?
Yeah. The comments here, I think, are spot on, and it really boils down into what I would consider customer experience. As we've seen the commercial or the commercialization, right, of technology through cloud adoption, our customers, whether they be our employees as customers of an IT group, our constituents, or we are customers of our government and government agencies, or customers of a business serving a market. It's really accelerated that need to provide an excellent user experience and be able to do that using whatever methods that those individuals want to interact with. When it comes to IT, you've commented a couple of times about bring your own device. I was talking with a CISO earlier this week who over the last 6 months has had 3 laptops die. Now imagine being at home with no access to IT support and having your laptop, your one business machine die on you, and now you can't be productive at all unless you're using a personal device. So how do we support those types of use cases now? How do we make intelligent decisions around what information that person should be able to access from a mobile device to make sure that the business can stay productive and that person can stay productive? Where you're talking about augmented reality, right? In the past, as IT professionals, we could have a homogeneous environment. We would just buy 100,000 laptops from a single manufacturer. Those days are gone. If we're looking at implementing these new technologies quickly and effectively, we have to be able to support all of those different types of devices while still making sure that they are secured, they're patched, they're approved, and they're accessing the right data and not wandering all over our network, shipping our IP off to competitors or other attackers.
So managed and unmanaged, or trusted, untrusted devices, but it's not so much untrusted anymore. It's about enabling the productivity to continue with those devices. So what would be the accompanying business decisions with those device boundaries?
Yeah,
Great.
our customers expect that.
Yeah, continuity, right? Again, speaking of sustained operations and steady state and continuity. So we touched upon also these trends and accelerated trends showing up in your current strategy. What does the new normal look like where you're sitting now? And possibly it's a moving target and a sort of a shifting landscape. But with what you see today, what does the new normal look like? Some of you have touched upon what is provisional and what is permanent, but maybe you could reiterate it if you already have. Within the new normal, what do you think is provisional and permanent? Meg, we'll start with you on this one.
Sure. From a technology perspective, I mentioned just using modern technology, cloud technologies. That's going to be really important. We have closed some offices in the US, and so we'll definitely have sustained remote work at an even higher level than we've had in the past. So I think about it as strategic remote work as opposed to sort of the tactical flexibility policies that we've had in the past. The one thing that I think, and I hope, is sustainable for the long term is the empathy that we've seen come out around the organization and truly, I think, in our communities as well, giving people grace and understanding, especially those on my team who have young children. I remember when I had young children. I'm an empty nester now, and I can't imagine how they can focus and get their jobs done with little ones to take care of. Some of them have to teach and that sort of thing. So I think just that empathetic workplace is really something that we're going to see be sustained here.
I love it. I love it. It's like, if we exhibit empathy, then we're going to receive empathy as well. You mentioned strategic remote work. I think that's great as well. And for people like me trying to hold on to sanity, I think it's like sustained sanity is where we're focused on.
Yeah.
Tony, how about you? What are you thinking about in new normal and what's here to stay and what's temporary?
Yeah, I think the working culture in general is just a very important thing. Staff well-being, right? Getting burnt out. We've taken a conscious effort to defer or reprioritize efforts to ensure that we're kind of achieving more by maybe doing less, just given the current circumstances. And hopefully that's resonating through the staff, and they're starting to see that we're not necessarily operating at the pace that we were before when we had interactions and more ability maybe to have ad hoc conversations, for example. But I think we're also seeing just overall improvements with the technology that we now have, and that's only going to make things stronger, assuming we're able to get back and working in person again. Some things that stick out in our mind is, as part of this acceleration, information systems acceleration team that we did, is we've stood up virtual tech bars, for example, where we've kind of created a virtual ongoing help environment so that staff can go, get things they need, like Chris was mentioning. What happens if a laptop dies? Do we still have this support, even though we're physically not on a campus, where we can just go return that? And I think we've seen a lot of a lot of processes and capabilities been built around that I think will carry on into the future. And then I guess just, lastly, we have these new collaboration tools in place. And I think a lot of those tools are going to help us change the way we interact remotely in the future. And so if we're ever put into a position where we have to enact a DR plan, for example, I think our range or our arsenal of things that we can use are now just way better off than they were prior to COVID. And I think those are some of the things that have helped us.
Very nice. And Chris?
Yeah, I think that's a great response. The the focus that we've had on the employees and the people is really something that will maintain, and that is driving a lot of the decisions that we're making as an organization in terms of redeveloping and redefining what our workspaces look like. They're going to be much more collaboration focused and experience focused when you come into an Okta office now, as opposed to the traditional open office lines of desks that everyone's working at. It's going to be a lot more of a personalized experience because again, that's what our employees and our extended workforce are looking for. When I think what else is permanent, we've talked a little bit about that acceleration of cloud adoption and of technology adoption. That's absolutely going to be permanent, and we're going to need to find new ways to address that. The BYOD concepts are going to continue to really define productivity in my mind, and we need to be able to set up our systems to understand the identity of the person using them as well as the identity of the device, and then make intelligent decisions on access based on that. That's going to significantly reduce the friction that IT and security impose on our workforce, and will allow people the flexibility, right, that we're now used to. I don't know how many of us are working 8 to 5 days. I'm certainly not. I love the ability to work a couple hours in the morning and then take 2 hours off and enjoy a long lunch and walk the dog, and then I come back and maybe do a couple more hours of work, have a nice dinner with my family, and then finish up email in the evening. That flexibility is something that all of our workforce is going to demand in the future, even if we start coming back, or even when, I should say, we start coming back to our own offices.
So people and collaboration-driven decision-making, including workspaces, but also in the way we work, right? All of that. And, I truly believe this is all like this thread that is interweaved across all the decisions that we make. Any of you have any summarizing advice for our audience in securing and sustaining remote work? Any last sort of takeaways, one-liners, anything that the audience can help to remember?
I think flexibility is something that we were able to demonstrate. We didn't talk very much about access for contractors or people outside of the US. That I would say that access was fairly locked down in the past, and they went remote just like the rest of us did. And I think that's an area that bears some inspection and analysis. So I think understanding the flexibility requirements around the globe is a takeaway that I have as well.
Thanks, Meg. Chris?
Yeah, I would say opportunity. This is an amazing opportunity for us to expand the horizons that we have as an organization, and not only the tools that we're using, but to get the most out of the people. Look at hiring outside of our typical corporate environments, bringing in the best talent from around the country or around the globe, and really enabling all of our businesses and all of our organizations to become a lot more inclusive and be better for it.
Very nice, especially the talent, the best talent we can go and hire upon merit. I think it's opened up the boundaries for many organizations with the secure remote work. Tony?
I would just say, from an IT or security perspective, it's if organizations haven't been already, building strong relationships with their business partners and their enterprise, now is the time to do it more than ever. Where we had a controlled environment where we could manage things kind of centrally, it's now very much decentralized. And so we just encourage everyone to kind of reach out and try to understand these use cases. Don't feel like the central team needs to solve all the problems. Try to understand the challenges and the scenarios that each unique staff or business line in your company is focused on, and try to come up with creative ways with them to really help them and enable what they're doing.
Love it. Flexibility, opportunity, enablement, right? Those are the takeaways. And the way, I'm looking at it is that we live in an imperfect world, and we're going to continue to be in that. And in my experience, the most effective way to build trust is to listen, learn, and lead with empathy. And we spoke about empathy, just a short while ago. And why does this matter for securing remote work? More importantly, securing and sustaining remote work, because I believe it creates a work environment full of empowered people who are going to invest in the organization's success. And I think we can all agree that that is a security-based trust posture that no money can buy. So thank you all. I really appreciate your time today, your thoughts that you have shared with our audience, and the takeaways that you have provided to them. Enjoy the rest of BoxWorks. Thank you.